today we're going to just jump right in. If you're a parent whose child struggles with constipation, you've heard of Miralax. I know. While it's prescribed and used so often, rarely is it a parent's first choice. And I know you already know this because none of us really want to have our kids be on any kind of medication, okay? And there's quite a few documented side effects in computing, including behavior struggles. And this is one that we see a lot here. So we see for many of our kids that are struggling with that perfect storm or struggling with behavior, there's always some other factors. And this is the one that we see a lot. We see dependency and increasing bloating, cramping, and gas, just to name a few. And you already know this. This is the hard part, but it's the only thing that you're usually given. And for most families that are starting to question, okay, is there another way? And that's what we want to dive into today. So Miralax is not needed as a tool to help constipation, and many safe and effective alternatives do exist. And we'll talk about that. But the primary cause of constipation in kids is signaling. Does that make sense? It's signaling. How is that brain and the gut communicating? It is literally brain, gut, brain. Because when that brain is not signaling correctly, then there is that constipation, that bloating, that gas, because the body is not breaking things down. It is not running through the system as it has. So there is no movement in the plumbing. Okay, I know you know this already. So moms, this is specifically for you because you're on the front lines of this, getting to deal with your kids' stuff. Especially for those younger children who are going to the pediatrician or those infants that are struggling, okay? And maybe there's all kinds of different stress factors that you've already walked through. So we want to talk to you about that because all of these factors that play in, we've talked about this, physical, mental, and emotional stress play huge impacts on what's going on for your kiddo. Okay, so I want to start with, our own Lindsay. Her story is that one of the things she said to me for both her boys were given Miralax for as soon as they were struggling from a very young age. That was the only alternative she was given. And she keeps seeing their behavior getting worse and worse and worse. And she was trying to figure out what the connection was. And when we went through the Perfect Storm, which is our seminar that we do here, she put it all together that my kid, it's about signaling. Their brain and their gut were not talking. They were not in this place of rest and digest. They were in this protection mode, okay? So we see this, that so many times at a very young age, these kids are given no alternative but Miralax, when there's so many other great things. Magnesium is a great solution. You believe it or not, increasing vitamin C helps with gut motility. There's so many things that we can do, but when we are, and take this very, very respectfully, we trust those who we go to tell us what to do because we want a solution to the problem. And sometimes the problem is deeper and it takes us a little bit longer to get there. And when we look at those initial problems, we're missing the root cause. We're not getting there, okay? So when we have that chronic constipation, that is a signaling that's going on, and mainly it leads to, what do we see? Anger issues, especially in the little ones. We start seeing them develop quote unquote colic. We start seeing them getting, sometimes even violent. And one of the things that Lindsay shared with me is that her kids were literally just melting down all the time. Why? Because they were full of it. Their body was not getting rid of things, okay? And then imagine them taking some ADHD medications on top of this. You got a brain that's firing all kinds of crazy signals all over the place, and then you got a gut that is not communicating. So we really have an issue across the board. And one of the things that she's noticed is as her boys have stopped taking that in the last couple of years, she's watched their behavior become very consistent, watching their body able to signal. It takes time and repetition to get the body to unlock. Okay, so what is Miralax? The main ingredients and side effects, you can look in our blog, it's covered there. You also go to pxdocs.com and look up Miralax side effects. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. But I want to explore some causes of constipation in kids. So let's go, before we get to needing Miralax, let's talk about what some of those natural alternatives that are safe for helping with chronic constipation, okay? So number one, there's a limited signal from the brain to the gut and gut to the brain. So the primary directive is the vagus nerve. Its whole job is to be the brake pedal. So if the body isn't getting into rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic, okay, then there isn't any signaling. The body is literally going to stay locked down. It is not going to release the poop. It is not going to let it out. It's going to hang on to it. So those signals in the gut, they're not resting. They're not digesting. And then when that digestion takes a back seat in a busy brain kid, there's simply more fight or flight than rest and digest. Does that make sense? It's literally the chips are stacked. So when you have that busy brain going on and they're always in that place of not getting to a place of rest or digest, whether it's an infant who's been through birth trauma or a 8 or 10-year-old who's in 4th or 5th grade who can't do it. So next thing, number 2, let's talk about this. There's a lack of intestinal motility and movement. So motility is how quickly something's moving through the system, and we have movement, okay? You can nickname this like easy plumbing when the smooth muscle gets consistent sympathetic messaging. Our body is sending out, are we in fight or flight, or are we in rest and digest? And when it gets this consistent sympathetic or fight or flight signals all the time, it starts to stay tight, which means it's going to stay less hydrated, which means things are hard to pass. It's not absorbing the water, okay? It's not taking in what it needs to move things along. It is literally, there's been some great research that talks about how the vagus nerve affects intestinal inflammation. And one of the things that we know is that when that vagus nerve is in that fight or flight stage, it is not triggering things to move through the system. All right, number 4. Number 3, instead of using a medication to help get that to hydrate and thus soften that stool or the poop, address the cause. Let's find out what that cause is. So let's get that signal in the brain working first, and that's where the adjustment rolls in. That if we work as a neurologically focused, we want to see how the brain is communicating. What is that pattern? What is going on? What can we do different to get the brain to start talking to the gut so it can release that stress and get things moving? Number 4, add any natural remedies to an already balanced signaling brain. So if we get a balanced brain, then we can add things to that naturally. This is where you start seeing more water, because if you're stressed, you're not absorbing water. You can see magnesium, probiotics, enzymes, and limit that sugar intake. This is one of the hardest things for my perfect storm families and any kid who's struggling with constant constipation or chronic constipation is just this, is that they are not balanced, they're not signaling. So they're craving sugars like crazy because their brain is wanting fast, easy food, okay? So when you have a balanced signaled system, the plumbing is gonna flow and it's gonna flow and go. And that's what we want. We want to get the poop out. So that is your call to action. So find out what's going on, okay? So if we have a balanced system that's communicating, that's not under stress, that smooth muscle can relax, it can actually absorb and use the water that's there, and then the minerals that our body needs can be pulled out of the food to then relax the whole system and get us back into fight or flight. So if this is you, mom, whether it's an infant or a teen who's struggling, or maybe even you, let's get this going. So poop, there it is. Let's get it out. Know that we love you guys. Follow us, read more on the negatives of Miralax on our website, through our blog. Follow us, share this, come to one of our workshops. We have a lot of great opportunities coming up, especially this month on the perfect storm and how we can help get your kid unstuck and hopefully get things moving.